What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode on the Big Blue in the Bronx YouTube channel. Be sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or drops. Appreciate you all coming back. Also, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Big Blue in the Bronx, and Twin Bill. Want to do a quick video for content's sake and also just to get my thoughts out if you guys haven't been watching the podcast lately. Really, Boys Big Apple Pod and Big Blue in the Bronx Pod. I want to really give my thoughts on this offensive line. Haven't really talked about it too much in video sake all season. So, I kind of want to go through it now. So, obviously, the Giants' offensive line has been banged up in multiple different fashions. Week 1, the starting O-line was Thomas, Bredesen, Feliciano, Glowinski, and Neal. That was the Week 2 lineup as well. That was the Week 3 lineup. Josh Azudu factored in a little bit in, in Week 1. He didn't really play Week 2 too much. He might have. But Week 3 he didn't play. Week 4 he didn't play. Week 5 against the Packers, it remained the same lineup. Maybe an old lineman got hurt. I think Glowinski got hurt for like few snaps, or it was Bredesen, and then they put Azudu in. But, it virtually really didn't make a difference. Week 6... But it really shaped up and, mixed up in Week 7 when Evan Neal and Ben Bredesen got hurt. And from then on, they put Josh Azudu at left guard. And they put Tyree Phillips at right tackle. So that remained the starting lineup once again for another week. Then you have the bye week. Obviously, Neal stays off IR. Bredesen goes on IR. And you have it against the Texans. Azudu plays left guard. Nick Gates gets a little bit more snaps with Jack Anderson as well, but it's really the same lineup. Tyree Phillips still a right tackle. So then you move forward a couple of games, and Evan Neal still not ready by the Cowboys game, and Josh Azudu gets hurt against the Lions, and he had an aggravating injury up to that point as well, so he would be out for the Cowboys game. Also, Lemieux came back for a few snaps and really fucking struggled and re-injured his toe, so he was out. He's still injured to my knowledge. So the starting line against the Cowboys was Thomas, Anderson, Gates, Glowinski, Tyree Phillips. Then against the Commanders, it shaped up a little bit differently. Bredesen and Azudu still being out. Left tackle Thomas, left guard Gates, center Feliciano, Glowinski, and then Evan Neal returning on the right side. So what are my thoughts? Well, I'll give you one stat real quickly. Obviously, pressure stats are tough to accumulate mid-season for both offensive linemen and the team overall without paying some sort of subscriptions. I'm not ready for that yet. But overall, they've given up the 5th most sacks in the NFL. With the Colts, the Bears, the Rams, the Broncos in front. And overall, even though the stats don't indicate it, I think they've been a fairly slightly subpar unit. I think this is a better line than we've seen in years, and that's not to say we don't need to make changes, because the whole point of this video is the fact that we do need to make changes on the offensive line, and we really need to have an outlook in terms of next year. I'm going to start on one player, and that player is John Feliciano. I don't know why PFF sucks him off so much, but he's not very good. He's got no awareness. He's just not very good at center. He's often beat up in pass protection. It's very average. He gives up a lot of ground. And, with him giving up a lot of ground, he's just not a tough dude in the chest. His hand placement, there's a lot of different issues with John Feliciano. And I've kind of been calling his name out for a little while on here. And when Nick Gates was back at center against the Lions, and when he was back at center against the Cowboys, he played well. Like, he played some really efficient football, which pissed me off as to why, I wouldn't word it like that, but it pissed me off as, them putting him at left guard, because left guard, in my opinion, I've never really felt keen about Nick Gates starting there. Feliciano, obviously, last year he had some issues with the Bills. They benched him, and he wasn't starting for the rest of the year. And then he took a shot at them. I think it was during training camp about him not getting playing time or whatever. It came in as a starting center. He's just not a very good player. And if he had a future with this team, I'd understand, but it's a one-year contract. So, in my opinion, the Giants should make some changes. They should remove him from the center position. Keep him as a backup. If he has to play guard, he has to play guard. But he doesn't really have much awareness, which is a problem, and he really doesn't stick around to find work. I just don't think that there's a ceiling for him. He is what he is, and it's a negative impact on the Giants, Daniel Jones, and the players that surround him on the offensive line because, there could be some plays where he makes Glowinski, Ezeudu, and Bredesen look worse, which is something I'm really scared of. But he has given up the 9th most sacks among interior offensive linemen with 2. He's got 3 penalties. Obviously, we know 1 penalty against the Commanders that cost us. A bunch of other things cost us as well, but, that penalty sticks out. So I'm on the bench John Feliciano train. I've been that way for a while because he has no future with the team and there's nothing to grind out with him. Another player I want to talk about in terms of making changes is Mark Glowinski. Now, I've been fighting with myself for the past few weeks about, should Glowinski be benched? Should he not be? I think the hammer finally dropped against the Commanders. Shout out to Bobby Skinner. He had these stats on Glowinski when he was doing his film breakdown. He has the 6th worst pass blocking efficiency numbers for guards in 2022. 4 of those 5 with worse numbers are rookies. So you probably think right off the bat Kenyon Green, Cordell Volson maybe, some of those other guys. And he also has the 3rd most sacks allowed for guards. Now, with that being said, we came into this year knowing that Glowinski was an average pass protector and that he was a better run blocker. To be quite fair and honest, it's not like the run blocking has been overall great. It hasn't. The last few weeks, it's just not been efficient. It's of a lot of different things. I think it's a combination of 3. The O-line isn't necessarily doing well on their part. That's A. B. Saquon is tired. He's not grinding with his legs. He's dancing a little bit. He's just leaning. And Mike Kafka is too overly dependent on the running game and not letting Jones air it out. Obviously, I have some stats going back to last game that prove that giving it to Daniel Jones on first down rather than Saquon Barkley is more efficient. Obviously, that will be for another video, probably down the line or maybe even a podcast episode, whatever. But Glowinski has just looked bad. He's allowed 5 sacks on the season if you want straight up numbers. And I think it's time for a change. As I said, I was fighting with myself because I'm like, you know what? Maybe the run blocking just really goes over the pass blocking, and maybe if he had a different center. Well, he's gotten that opportunity, and he's blown it. It's a tough situation if you're the New York Giants, and I'm going to pull up Spot Track real quickly because it's going to help me kind of support my argument in this. And it's a tough situation for the Giants. Excuse me, there's a fly flying around. It's a tough situation for the Giants in the respect of they cannot cut him after this year. Your potential out is 2024, and that's really the way they structured the contract, because if you cut him 2023, cap savings of negative $900,000 and then dead cap of 8. Now, obviously, you'll have some money next year to maneuver with, but at the same time, it's not worth releasing Glowinski. After all, Glowinski is a solid depth piece. I think maybe we just looked into it a little bit better because Glowinski was solid in Indy and they had a really good O-line coach. I don't know if that's the case now, but I know the O-line is like pretty bad over there. But with that being said, Glowinski does not necessarily have a future with this team, kind of like Feliciano does. And I don't think, obviously, the Giants need to make too many moves in terms of micromanaging the roster at all positions, but Glowinski is just not cutting it. if you look at the film and the passing game, it's not like, okay, well, there's one thing or another. He's just constantly beat by bigger defensive linemen with claws. Like we saw in week 2 when he was getting clawed on by Matt Ioannidis. Like he was getting clawed by a fucking tiger. And he gives up ground, and it's way too much ground. On that Daniel Jones throw to Darius Slayton against the Cowboys, Glowinski's guy was right in Jones's face as he was throwing the football. So I just don't see a ceiling as to why we need to keep him in the stopgaps, right? Even though we are a rebuilding team. Well, I should say, let me flip that. Even though we are a contending team, we are still rebuilding at the same time. And when Ezeudu comes back, I think you need to place Ezeudu at left guard, move Gates back into the center position, and then put Ben Bredeson at right. Now, how did I feel about Ben Bredeson coming into the year? I wasn't necessarily too keen on him. I was like, I mean, he's a depth piece. We'll see what Lemieux has. And I was just sort of perplexed and mystified, surprised, all these different things. Because my original projection, and you guys will find this very weird, is my original projection coming in was like Max Garcia was going to be the starting left guard. And there was like a whole poll I ran whether you want Ezeudu at left guard or it was Ezeudu, Garcia, or Lemieux. And then they started with Lemieux in training camp as the left guard. So I'm like, wow, this is a shocker to me. So they still believe in this guy. And, the same amount of guys scouted him when he was at Oregon, like the Buffalo Bill type of guys. So obviously there was some interest going back a couple of years. But Bredeson, I mean, he showed me some stuff in the running game earlier this year before he went out. And, as a pass protector, I think he's fine. Obviously, he's not great as a pass protector, but I think there's some stuff you could work on in terms of going for the future. Now, should the Giants draft an interior lineman next year? I would say so. As far as Josh Ezeudu goes, you got to play him because you got to get the stuff out of him. I think he's definitely grown in his game. His footwork and athleticism is always nice, but his awareness needs to get a little bit better. As far as Neal goes, he's gotten better in pass protection. I've really noticed that. Run blocking, there's still some balance issues, and Thomas is Thomas. I mean, even though PFF credits him with a sack that he really shouldn't be credited with, he's still a top tackle in this league, and you need to lock him down. As far as Lemieux goes, I don't think he has a place on this team in the future. Maybe as a depth piece next year. Maybe he tries to, I would say battle with Jack Anderson for a spot. I don't really see Anderson as a part of this team in the future. Maybe once again as a depth piece, but you could easily say, okay, because of the contract, Glowinski. Or you could try to trade Glowinski, but obviously there might not be a market for him that's, fitting the Giants' needs in terms of picks. But overall, man, just to summarize my thoughts, Thomas, great. Gates should be moved back to center. Evan Neal, he's looking really solid coming off the injury. Once Bredeson returns, stick him over to right guard, leave Ezeudu at left guard, bench Feliciano, bench Glowinski, and see what you can get out of this O-line. If it's solid results, I would still move to draft an O-lineman, but you got to see what you have in your future. And it's a really young line. I mean, Nick Gates is still young. Bredeson's still young. There's still room to grow with those type of guys. Glowinski is who he is, and same thing applies to John Feliciano. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when live stream posts video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Peace out, guys. See you later, and stay cool.